Good morning, everyone. Please continue to fast on this morning's breakfast. The 2017 Sun Belt Conference Media Day. A week ago yesterday, it was breakfast at Wimbledon. Yesterday, it was breakfast at the Open Championship. And today, it's breakfast with the commish here at the home of the Sun Belt Conference, the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. As in the past, all of today's activities will be distributed via ESPN beginning from 1 to 3. And also for the first time, the activities today will be on the Sun Belt YouTube channel. So please, as you report out to your viewers and listeners, that they can be watching and listening to this from afar. For those of you who attended last night's media party, the inaugural Sun Belt Fay-Do-Do, you were part of a historical day in the world of sports. July 23rd, the Cubs moved into first place. A U.S. final at Royal Birkdale as Jordan Spieth wins the Open Championship by going birdie, eagle, birdie, birdie, par in the last 5 holes. And yes, the Sun Belt launches its own version of the clam bake, causing the Sun Belt Twitter account last night to go through the charts throughout the evening. Our intent with last night's party was to knock it out of the park. And congrats to my staff for making it happen just like we planned. We hope you all enjoyed it. Those that missed it, we'll have it next year for sure. Welcome to those of you who are attending your first football media day, including Georgia State head football coach Sean Elliott, Louisiana Athletics Director Brian Maggard, and just on the job now for less than 2 weeks, ULMAD Nick Floyd. Welcome, gentlemen. My staff cringes when I do this, but I've been doing it now for the past 25 years, so why stop now? Update your contact information for me while you have a pen out, or you can just come back and watch the replay of this, which that's why they will cut this, I guess, before it goes out. Same phone number, cell 720-98. Yes, I still have a Twitter account, though it's somewhat inactive, Benson at Commish, or Benson Commish. We'd also like to welcome those key donors from Georgia State, Louisiana, and South Alabama who took advantage of the invitation to attend the Media Day activities to get an inside-the-ropes look into Media Day. We hope to expand on this program at next year's Media Day with an even greater number of participants. But those of you who made the trip to New Orleans, thank you for taking the time to attend, and we hope you had a great time. Also in attendance are our football bowl partners. From the R&L Carrier New Orleans Bowl, Billy Ferrante, our first and longest bowl partner, having now hosted 16 games right here in the Superdome, dating back to the beginning of Sun Belt football in 2001. Also Jerry Silverstein from the Dollar General Bowl in Mobile, Will Hope from the Raycom Camellia Bowl in Montgomery, Alan Gooch from the AutoNation Cure Bowl in Orlando, and Alan Young from the Nova Home Loans Bowl Arizona game in Tucson. The Sun Belt thanks you for your efforts and is honored to be partners with you. All these gentlemen will be available for interviews throughout the morning. As you know, the Sun Belt is one of 10 members of the NCAA football subdivision, the FBS, and also a member of the College Football Playoff, the CFP, and one of 5 conferences labeled by the CFP as the Group of 5. Michael Kelly, the CFP CFO, is with us today, along with representatives from the Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, and Cotton Bowl. These gentlemen, too, will be available for interviews throughout the morning, and we appreciate all of you being here. And finally, the Sun Belt is pleased to acknowledge a soon-to-be-announced alliance with the American Cancer Society. Please welcome Brandy Ammons and Kate Kelly, as we look forward to working with you in the coming months, and thank you and the American Cancer Society for all you do to help cure cancer. And I would be remiss at this time if I also didn't recognize Alan Gooch, the founder of the AutoNation Cure Bowl, the only college football bowl game that not only provides a bowl experience for our student athletes and fans, but is aligned with the Breast Cancer Research Foundation to help find a cure for breast cancer. In the first 2 years of the Cure Bowl, it has contributed over $2 million to the BCRF, which in turn directs 95% of all contributions to research that will in time find a cure for this disease that has touched so many of you and your families that are in the room today. Alan, the Sun Belt is proud to be a partner of the Cure Bowl and applaud your dedication and commitment to this cause. Okay, hopefully you now have had a chance to finish your breakfast. As one journalist indicated to me, saying that was really a Power 5 breakfast. Steak and eggs. Once again, we've hopefully set a standard for Media Day breakfast. And now I'll make a few remarks that have been advertised as the state of the conference. My opportunity to provide a look perhaps at the past, the present, and the future for the Sun Belt. 5 years ago at this time, the Sun Belt was preparing for the departures of 5 universities as they made institutional decisions to seek greener pastures and join another conference. The Sun Belt, on the other hand, was preparing to rebuild the conference that's been in existence since 1976. And now, 5 years later, we have completed that project by adding 6 outstanding universities as Coastal Carolina becomes a full-fledged member of the conference in all sports effective July 1. These 6 outstanding universities all share similar academic missions and aspirations to be the best, along with the 6 other Sun Belt Conference members. They each also share a commitment to achieve greatness in the arena of college sports. We added the 6 universities with a strategic plan to provide a geographic footprint based on 6 pairs of travel partners. And when I'm asked, so who is in the Sun Belt today, the easiest way for me to describe it, and I encourage our coaches and others, just to go from west to east. We have 2 schools in Texas. We have 2 in Arkansas. We have 2 in Louisiana, which makes up the western side of the conference. And as we go to the east, 2 in Alabama, 2 in Georgia, and 2 in the Carolinas, which makes up the east. And looking at that map, and despite the fact that we go from Texas to Carolina and Arkansas to Georgia, it really has been created in a way to reduce travel time by these 6 travel pairs. It was done to reduce the travel by our student athletes, to reduce the missed class time by our student athletes, while at the same time to hopefully manage the travel expenses for our teams by our athletic departments. And at the same time, we believe that it has created the opportunity for real regional rivalries. At the same time, some crossover rivalries that need time to merge and to percolate to get to the point. But as we look to the future, we believe that the structure that we've created is the right structure. It is able to be, it's sustainable. It is very, very workable. And as we manage 19 sports under the Sun Belt Conference umbrella, we believe it's in the best interest of our student athletes. As many of you recall, in the summer of 2013, the Sun Belt went through a rebranding campaign that resulted in a new logo and a brand identity. And with that, we created a mantra, a battle cry, "Together we rise." And about the same time, and without a whole lot of fanfare or thought, I made the mistake one day of labeling my Twitter account with the heading, "The Sun Belt's future is so bright I've got to wear shades." I wasn't intending for this to promote the Sun Belt, but it too has taken on a little life of its own and has become one of my messages and one of my talking points, that the future has been bright. Well, during the past 4 years, the Sun Belt has certainly taken the mantra to heart, and due to the success of our student athletes and teams on the various fields and courts, and the financial commitment that has been made by all 12 member schools to build new athletic facilities, the SBC has certainly risen and reestablished itself as a credible and notable conference. And we have now created our own pasture that is just as green as our peer conferences and getting greener every year. And as the United States economy continues to trend up, so does the Sun Belt Conference. The current Sun Belt football members have had many, many big wins against Power 5 teams in the past 10 years. Beginning in 2007 when App State beats Michigan, ULM beats Alabama, and Troy beats Oklahoma State. And in 2008, Arkansas State beats Texas A&M. And in the past 5 years, ULM beats Arkansas in 2012, Georgia Southern beats Florida in 2013, ULM beats Wake Forest in 2013 and 14, and last year South Alabama beats Mississippi State, and at the time number 19 ranked San Diego State, which then went on to win the Mountain West Championship in 2016. So the pundits who question whether SBC football teams can match up against the so-called big boys of college football don't have to look too far in the past to see just the opposite. But by far, this past season, 2016, was the best year overall collectively in the Sun Belt Conference. A record-setting 6 bowl-eligible teams, all going to bowl games, with 4 of those teams winning bowl games. And the Sun Belt finishing number 2 in the ESPN Bowl Cup, narrowly behind the Atlantic Coast Conference, but ahead of our peer conferences in the Group of 5, the American, the Mountain West, the MAC, and Conference USA. And speaking of our peer conferences, the Sun Belt finished number 3 in the Group of 5 rankings, which is the rankings that the CFP uses to distribute the financial benefits that the Sun Belt and the other 4 conferences receive from being part of the CFP. Nearly $90 million a year is divided by the 5 conferences, and that Group of 5 ranking determines the amount that each conference gets. The difference between number 3 and number 5 is approximately $3 million. So the Sun Belt was able to capitalize on that last year by being the 3rd ranked conference. But today, it's no longer about the past or the goofy guy in the optic yellow shirt with the sunglasses promoting the Sun Belt. Yes, that be me. While yesterday the future was bright for the Sun Belt, today that future is now. Yes, indeed, our football programs have emerged over the past 5 years, and we are no longer that younger brother of the other 9 CFP conferences. We are ready to stand toe-to-toe, shoulder to shoulder, and are now prepared to compete head-to-head against our peer conferences as we move into the next era of the Sun Belt Conference. And while we look forward to 2018 and being a 10-team football league as planned, as orchestrated, in the inaugural football championship game, we still must focus on this season. And though one of our Group of 5 peer conferences may have loftier goals, the Sun Belt continues to strive to be the highest ranked conference of the Group of 5, to have the highest ranked champion of the Group of 5, and to play in a New Year's Day bowl game against a team from the Power 5 and beat that team. That is our goal. That is our plan. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a realistic goal, not in the future, but today. Yes, now is the future for the Sun Belt Conference. This concludes my state of the conference remarks. I will now, before we get to Q&A, turn my attention to 4 or 5 other items. As long as we have some time, I definitely want to do Q&A. Do we want to move up now, or why don't we go ahead and move up now as I finish those remarks and focus on just some facts and figures and maybe trivia. But I'll go ahead and start while you're moving up to find your spots. I mentioned that our pastures are getting greener. Sunbelt gross revenues in 2013 were approximately $11 million. For this past fiscal year, our gross revenues, $31 million, a significant financial increase. Of that $31 million, $15 million came from the CFP and as a result of that number 3 ranking in the group of 5, which again demonstrates the significance of those rankings and our competition against those peer conferences. And as I said before, the comparison, the difference between number 5 ranked conference and number 3 is approximately $3 million. Last month, on June 30th, the Sun Belt sent end-of-year revenue distributions of approximately $1 million to each Sun Belt member school. This compares to 2013, when Sun Belt member schools received $100,000 in end-of-year revenue. Yes, the financial health of the Sun Belt is trending up, as is the financial benefit from being a member of the Sun Belt. Non-conference scheduling. I've said previously that the key to overall success for Sun Belt football and how we do in those Group of 5 rankings depends greatly on the non-conference scheduling of its member schools. 5 years ago, there was not a scheduling strategy by our members. It was done for financial reasons as they scheduled. However, I've been able to get the point across, and there's been buy-in and commitment by presidents and chancellors to recognize and understand just how important those 4 non-conference games are in terms of strategic scheduling. And we've created a model that we believe is the right model. It's a balance. It provides our teams with the best chance of if that benchmark is winning 6 games to become bowl eligible, which we had 6 last year, and I believe strongly that the scheduling philosophy and strategy that we have created was a result of last year's scheduling of non-conference games. The model today is 1 game against one of the Power 5 conference teams. As many of those games as you can get at home, obviously, the better. Then 2 games against our peer conferences. Again, at least one home game out of that, and then 1 game annually against an FCS school, which is always a home game. So the key would be to get two non-conference games at home, 2 on the road, 3 and 1 at home, 1 away is the best. That's the model. It doesn't happen overnight. Football schedules are made years in advance, but we are heading that direction, and we are seeing some real change in our football scheduling. This year we play 17 teams from the Power 5, divided over 12 teams. That's 1.6 on an average. We have 5 teams that are only playing 1 Power 5 team. But we don't have any that are playing 3. 5 years ago, it was not uncommon to see 3 non-conference opponents from Power 5 conferences on the schedule of the Sun Belt. It's also critical in the games that we play against our Group of 5. Last year we played 17 games against our Group of 5. We were 7-10. This year we play 16 with 6 home, 10 away. We play 4 against the American, 6 against Conference USA, 2 against the MAC, and 4 against the Mountain West. Those 16 games are critical to our overall ranking and end-of-year performance and bowl eligibility. Yes, it's great to knock off a team from the Power 5, and there will be Sun Belt wins this year. Out of those 17 games, there will be wins against the Power 5. We have 3 of those games at home, which is a good balance. Arkansas State hosts Miami of Florida. South Alabama hosts Oklahoma State, and Appalachian State hosts Wake Forest. So those are 3 Power 5 opponents that are in Sun Belt stadiums. I mentioned earlier our bowl partners, and again, the growth that we've seen from 2012 to now with 5 guaranteed automatic bowl spots in New Orleans and Mobile and Montgomery. And when you look at those 3 as being in the Sun Belt footprint, directly in the Sun Belt footprint, that fits our bowl strategy. Our fans can travel to those 3 easily. And then we've been able to add 2 destinations. The Cure Bowl in Orlando, obviously a destination that Arkansas State and Georgia State have experienced, and a great, great destination for fans and student athletes. And then last year, South Alabama got to enjoy the hospitality of Tucson, another destination. So we believe strongly that our 5 bowl games fit perfectly and nicely in terms of geographic footprint, but also the opportunity. Remembering that our champion hopefully will be in that mix for one of the New Year's Day games. And if that's the case, then our champion has that, that right to play in the New Year's Day game if it's the highest ranked champion. If not, then all of our bowl eligible teams fall into a pool, and there is an order, selection order by our bowls, with New Orleans picking first, Mobile picking second, Montgomery third, Orlando fourth, and Arizona fifth. That is the designated by contract with our bowl partners. However, the cooperation that we have with our bowl partners, all of our goal is to put the right team in the right place against the right opponent. And that's, the bowls want that flexibility. We want the flexibility, and we also want to have the flexibility that should we have an excess bowl eligible team like we did a year ago, the flexibility with our bowl partner to be able to move a team out of one of our designated 5. And last year, in our first year with our relationship with the Arizona Bowl, they allowed us to move a team that was kind of earmarked for Tucson to Boise, the University of Idaho, that made sense for the University of Idaho, that made sense for that bowl, and to slip in South Alabama that allowed us to get 6 teams placed. That's the cooperation that we have with our bowl partners. So as that last week of the season comes down and all the prognosticators are trying to slot teams, they don't know what's happening behind the scenes as we try to make sure that we get the right team in the right place, and that our bowl partners are satisfied, our television partner ESPN is satisfied, and our particular teams are satisfied. So that's a little bit of a primer in terms of kind of how the bowl system works. Television, we continue to benefit from the power of ESPN. And despite the reports and the writings about the demise of ESPN and the number of subscribers, ESPN is still the most powerful television network in college sports. And it will always be that most powerful. No other network will ever be able to replace ESPN as the premier college sports network. And the Sun Belt has had a long-term relationship with them. We have a long-term contract that goes through the 2019 season. However, we're reaching a time when you normally start talking about renewals and extension. And in light of our football championship game that ESPN owns rights to that game, we are currently beginning negotiations not only for the football championship game, but hopefully for an extension of our existing arrangement. This year is a demonstration, again, of our partnership with ESPN. In the past, we were limited to 10 games on what we refer to now as the linear platforms, the ESPN, the ESPN2, the ESPNU. So today's broadcast world has linear platform stations that you hit the channel button, and then there's the digital world. And the Sun Belt was fortunate enough to be in on the ground floor as ESPN launched ESPN3, their digital platform. And today, that digital platform is becoming just as accessible and is as watched as the platform. And Sun Belt fans across the footprint of the Sun Belt have probably become one of the most adaptable fan base in terms of how to use ESPN3. And that now you can sit in your living room, in your big chair, in front of your 50-inch flat screen and watch games on ESPN3. And this will be the 4th year in a row that all 68 home games on our 12 campuses, 68 home games, will all be viewable on some ESPN platform. There will be 12 games on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, and then all the remaining games will be viewable on ESPN3. There's also some opportunities for some sub-licensing that we had a year ago that may exist this year, but we're primarily a solely ESPN partner and ESPN property, and I think there's some real value in that our fans know where to go to watch a game, whether it's a home game or an away game during the course of the season. Finally, our football championship game, plans are well underway, waiting for ESPN to finalize the actual agreement to know whether the game is on Friday, November 30th or Saturday, December 1st, but we expect that it will be either Friday night or hopefully, ideally, Saturday afternoon is where we're hoping that the first championship game. The divisions have been created. We've announced those divisions, 2 5-team divisions. Championship game will be played at the site of the highest rated champion based on some CFP rankings and the formula. So what we do know is it'll be on a campus site, and right now there are 10 athletic directors and 10 football coaches and a lot of student athletes that really want to be able to be the host of the first Sun Belt Championship game. As we divided those divisions, pretty easy to see who was in the West and who was in the East, with Texas State and Arkansas State and Louisiana, Monroe and Louisiana definitely on the western side, and on the eastern side, Georgia State, Georgia Southern, Coastal Carolina, and App State clearly were there. Right in the middle of the conference, we have Troy and South Alabama. And one of them had to go east, one of them had to go west. And when you look at the map, Troy is much closer to Georgia State and Atlanta. And that was the determining factor, that Troy would go east and South Alabama would go west. As we do the divisions, playing 8 games, your 4 division opponents and then 4 teams in the other side. Just so that we won't have to answer this later on, South Alabama and Troy will, despite being in different divisions, will be guaranteed playing each other into the foreseeable future. So that was done to accommodate Troy and South Alabama and their in-state rivalry and just the proximity to that. Conference schedule, that conference schedule for 2018, athletic directors yesterday were working on the final pieces in terms of determining. There's a skip. When you play 8 conference games, you're going to be skipping an opponent every year, or every 2 years is the cycle. So, but we do expect for that schedule to be announced. The 2018 schedule and 19 schedule will be announced. Only the conference games, remember. Non-conference games are much later in the spring. But we will make that announcement here in the next couple of weeks. And finally, football officiating. We've been blessed the last 3 years, this begins our 4th year, with our arrangement with the SEC as a joint football officiating program. What we first talked about was an experiment and a short-term agreement. We soon realized that this was a terrific addition to the Sun Belt. Steve Shaw, the supervisor of the SEC officials, became our supervisor, and we absolutely got the best in terms of football officiating. Steve now not only oversees Sun Belt officiating and the SEC officiating, he also has recently been named the Secretary Rules Editor for the entire NCAA. So Steve not only becomes the voice and the face of Sun Belt officiating and SEC officiating, he now becomes the face and the voice of national football officiating. I really don't know why he would take on that privilege, I guess, Steve. But we know we got the best. Steve's available throughout the day for interviews, and I know we've got him set up for some. But just like we're committed to doing everything the best, our officiating, we expect that as well. We have the opportunity this year to be part of the next phase of instant replay. It's called collaborative replay. The NFL has used it for the last couple of years, where there's a center in New York where the NFL is watching and viewing all games, and they have the opportunity to come in from afar, from a central location, and review a play and perhaps change a play. Last year it was done experimentally. The SEC experimented with it. The NCAA now has adopted it as being permissible. You don't have to do it. And we are able to do it only because of our relationship with the SEC. And the game that probably pushed this to the top was the Central Michigan-Oklahoma State game last year that should have been changed. And had collaborative replay been in place last year, that play would have been overturned, and Oklahoma State would have won that game. And as I've been quoted here recently, it only takes one game. I've said that our games are just as important as SEC games or Big 12 games. So why wouldn't we, if given the opportunity, to have the chance to make sure that it's right? And we know also how one play can change the outcome of not just a game, but really a season. And so that's the reason that we are able to do that. So I'm going to stop there. Have time for Q&A for really as long as, I think we've got a pretty good window here. We've got a traveling microphone. If you could please announce yourself and your affiliation. And before you ask the question, that'd be great. So, Sydney, who's up first? Dan McDonald in the back.
Karl, with the collaborative replay, how will that change the actual physical setup at games this year?
In the Sun Belt stadiums, it will not. It's all done via cable that is back to the SEC headquarters, is where the center, and Steve will be able to elaborate more in some of your one-on-ones, but there will be a person in the SEC offices in their video department that will be designated as the Sun Belt collaborative replay. He's a former referee from the Sun Belt who will be watching, and we're only doing conference games, so on a given day there's only going to be 4 games that are in front of him to watch. But again, some of the benefit is that the SEC will have 2 other collaborative replay officials in that room, so there will be 3 former referees that are watching games throughout the day. And I think that also kind of benefits that it's 6 pair of eyes and not just 2.
Hey, Karl, Brett Strelo, Winston-Salem Journal. Just as we've gone a couple years into the college football playoff for the Group of 5 leagues, I know there's a lot of discussion outside about a Group of 5 playoff, how they can fit into a playoff system differently. Are those conversations you have, or when you kind of picture the future, stuff that you think about?
There have been athletic directors, and now most recently a fairly prominent football coach suggest some type of a Group of 5 playoff. We currently have a contract with the CFP that runs 9 more years. So I don't think there's anything that can be done in advance of that. Our benefit of being under the CFP umbrella is significant, and I don't think any of the commissioners want to sacrifice that. I've been quoted saying, is there a way for the Group of 5 to bring more attention and more notoriety to our champions? And how do we do that? Whether it's through regular season play among the conferences, whether it's perhaps a early season matchups that take the champions from the previous season, something that brings attention, but not to interrupt the postseason. And again, any of the models that have been out there about a quote playoff just won't work physically in terms of the calendar. And we have 4 out of our 5 bowl games, I guess 3 out of our 5 bowl games, that are played 14 days after our championship week. So I mean, it makes for good talk show conversation, but I don't think there's any appetite right now by by any of the 5 conferences to really have any serious conversation about it.
Good morning, Commissioner. Bob Kyrie with Reddit College Football. Next season, the conference is going to have 10 football playing members. Is the conference at all open to further expansion later on if it fits in the geographic footprint? UALR is looking, I know, at possibly developing a football team, for example.
Yeah, we are not actively looking or have any signals out there that we would entertain any new members. We got to 10 in a very methodical, thoughtful way. At one time, we thought we needed to be a 12-team league because of NCAA rules and how football championships. Once that was eliminated, that changed our entire philosophy and strategy. And so that's what resulted in the decision to go to 10. We also believe that 10 is the right number in terms of creating the structure and the non-conference scheduling to get to 6 wins. That a 10-team league has shown that more teams with fewer conference members or conferences with fewer teams appear to be better treated by the computers. The key is to win. You win 2 out of 4 non-conference games. You're really kind of halfway there, and so which is also kind of the reason that we're staying with 8 conference games. But Little Rock is going through a feasibility study. We do have bylaws in place that if a current member adds a sport, regardless of the sport, that the conference sponsors, that team then is grandfathered into the league. So, if Little Rock's feasibility study determines that they want to add a football program, if and when, they then would be incorporated into the Sun Belt just per our bylaws. But we are really, really happy with the 10 football programs that we have right now, and really have no interest in looking elsewhere.
Right here, Brett Martell
Yeah,
with Associated
I'm sorry,
Press.
Brett, yeah.
Quick follow-up to the last one then. So if a team does get grandfathered in and you end up with 11, is that a good number for you, or would then you actively look for a 12th to even the divisions?
It's pretty hypothetical. I think my standard answer is that the Big Ten was an 11-team football league for over 15 years, so and they did just fine. Two in the front here. Ted or
As you, Tim Buckley with the Advertiser in Lafayette. Karl, as you look at renegotiation or in terms of extending with ESPN, what are the things that are most important, whether it's more exposure or the finance issue, and what's your outlook on the perception that maybe there's not as much TV and media money out there as there once was?
I think that perception is real. I think that we have to to expect that the market is not real ripe in terms of numbers. When the Sun Belt started this journey 5 years ago, we were not dependent on television revenues. And as a result, we were able to make some decisions and build the conference knowing that we had very limited television revenue. And unlike other conferences that came to depend on those revenues and added members and added television markets, thinking that they were going to be the beneficiary of some expanded television revenue, that didn't happen. So on the good side, on the positive side, is that we've not been in that position. We have 10 teams that that we distribute our revenue to, and as we go forward, are we hoping for an increase? We would be hoping for some increase, but again, we're not building our financial models on that. Our financial models are built on success in the college football playoff, and as I mentioned earlier, that Group of 5 ranking that starts at 12 million for number 5 and goes to 13 to 15 to 17 to 21. Our goal is to get to that number 1 spot that gets the 20 million plus. The champion gets an additional 6 million. So that, compared to any new television money, is that's where our financial future lies. The exposure piece is important, but again, I think one of the questions that we're going to be asked, and we will ask, is the Tuesday night games. Are the Tuesday night games important enough from an exposure standpoint to interrupt and disrupt the fan experience, at our stadiums on a Tuesday night? We know that is a difficult game to manage, and we know that. But on the other hand, it has been one of our highest rated games, limited to 2, and we have 2 this year. But that'll be an important conversation we have, Tim.
Karl, Ted Lewis
Yes,
with
sir.
the Advocate. Sort of along that line, you talked about how much things have changed since you became commissioner 5 years ago. Put your thinking cap on 5 years from now. What is your vision for what the Sun Belt's going to look like?
We will have had, in 5 years, we will have had at least 2 teams play on New Year's Day. We will be in the top 3 each year in terms of our football performance. And we will have established ourselves in this region. And when you look at the region and the footprint we're in, obviously the SEC sits right on top of us. We sit right on top of Conference USA. Sun Belt and Conference USA really sit right on top of the American. And we share this footprint, the American, Conference USA, the Sun Belt, and the SEC. And, my goal for the Sun Belt is to be right behind the SEC in terms of the most prominent conference, in this footprint. Okay, I know that I'm going to talk off script here, so staff don't gulp here. Any of the donors from Georgia State or Louisiana or South Alabama, the mic is open for you to ask a question if you have any interest. Here's your opportunity. I hear from you. I get emails from you. I get voicemails in the middle of the night. I know your area codes. So, anything? Anyway, we really do appreciate your being here and being part of this and getting kind of an inside look. And next year, I think we can anticipate that there will be representation from the entire Sun Belt membership. This was an experiment, and we definitely see the value and the benefit, from having you all here with us. So I think with that, we stand adjourned. Media members that have been here in the past, I think you're already set up back in the Bienville room. The donors are invited to stay throughout the day. There is a full lunch at just what we need after last night and this morning. We're talking about lunch, but that's what you do here in New Orleans, I guess, is talk about the next meal. But anyway, appreciate everyone being here. I'm available throughout the day, as my staff, along with Steve Shaw. So thank you all for attending, and we are adjourned.